What's up, YouTube? Hope you guys are all doing well. I'm gonna get straight into it. So for those who watch the channel for the past 4 years or so that I've been vlogging, in South Florida, I've only recorded at Coconut Creek. That place is amazing. I love Coconut Creek, but yeah, it's the only place that I've had permission to film at up until about 2 weeks ago. Now I finally have permission to film at the Hard Rock. This place is amazing. I love playing here, and off camera I played here probably over 100 times now. Love it, but yeah, never had permission to record. I never wanted to discreetly record just because they don't want to get on anyone's bad side, or you guys know the drill. At Coconut Creek, I could freely pretty much record whatever I want. At the Hard Rock, I never wanted to push their buttons, but thanks to Jason and the wonderful people at Hard Rock, that has now changed. I'm able to record table footage at Hard Rock. So that's what we're gonna do today. 2-5 down here, not at Seminole Casino Coconut Creek, but today at Seminole Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida. All right, first hand being dealt at the Hard Rock, pocket jacks. Folds to me in late position, I make it 20, and we only see the 2 players in the blinds make the call. So we're off to see a flop, which comes pretty good. It comes 10-9-7 with 2 clubs. For our exact hand, it's pretty good, but for our range, it's really not that good. It's definitely gonna be better for them. So when they check it to me, I decide to pot control and check this one back. The turn now is another 9, the 9 of hearts. Once again, I think this card is gonna be a lot better for them. But when they do check it to me, I'm pretty sure we do have the best hand here, almost always. So I decide to bet half pot and gonna evaluate on a lot of rivers, but they both pretty quickly fold. In this next one, it's actually like an hour later. We are pretty card dead. We have 5-4 of spades in the small blind. We see a player in late position and the button both limp. I decide to raise it up to 35, and they both make the call. So we're going to be going 3 ways to a flop, which is about as good as we can ask for without flopping much of anything. It's 7-7-3 with 2 spades, so we go ahead and flop the straight flush draw. When action starts with me, if we had all over pairs, we would likely still be ahead. But this time, I decide to be a little deceptive. I start off with a check. A player in middle position now bets $50. The button folds, and I'm going to be sticking with my initial plan that if a player bets, I think a check raise is going to work a lot of the time. We're still repping a lot of big overpairs, and it's going to put those hands like 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s in a pretty tough spot. I look at a stack, he has around $700. So I make a bet that I think would get a lot of folds here on the turn, assuming that we don't improve. So I make it $175. Our plan worked. He pretty quickly folds. So we get this one through with just 5 high. Let's go. No joke, this hand that we're about to play is probably 45 minutes after the previous one. So really card dead early on in the session, but this time we do have a premium. Ace Queen of spades in late position, I make it 20, and a pretty solid player in the big blind defends. So heads up to a flop, which is not that good. It comes 9-6-5 rainbow. He checks it over to me, and without even a spade on the board, it's really not the best flop. I decide to check it back. The 4 of hearts peels on the turn, so this board got from bad to even worse. Definitely going to be better for his range, but he only leads out for $15 on this card. Against this sizing, I think we can pretty comfortably make the call. Ace Queen high very well might still be good, and if it's not, we probably have some outs to improve. An offsuit 7 peels on the river, putting a 4-liner out there. The backdoor flush draw does brick. He now sizes up and bets $75. Well, now we have a decision. I think fold is probably the best play because once again, this board is going to be a lot better for him. And I think against the population, I would just be folding pretty quickly. But this player, once again, he does know that this board is going to be a lot better for him. I think he could float the flop with those mentioned hands like Queen, Jack, Jack 10, etc. We're still ahead of those hands. I don't think he's ever turning a pair into a bluff here. So I don't know. I decide to get curious and make the call. And he shows King 8 offsuit. So he rivered the straight. Yeah, it's probably just not a good idea hero calling in these games. It's probably best to just make strong hands and bet ourselves. In this next hand, we look down at Ace 7 of spades in the small blind. The button limps, I make it 25 and she defends. We go ahead and flop top pair on Ace 8-9 with 2 hearts. I continue for $30 and she makes the call. Pretty sure we're ahead a lot of the time on the flop until the 10 of hearts peels on the turn. Definitely completes a lot of 2 pairs, flushes, straights, you guys get the deal. So I decide to pot control, planning on calling a bet though, but when she sizes up to $125, now we are definitely put in a spot. I check her stack and she only has around $125 behind. So I don't know, I think if we do plan on calling this one and the river's a brick, like I don't really imagine that we can fold. But at the same time, if we do just put her all in now, I think we're only going to be getting called by better hands or hands with just a lot of equity. So honestly pretty indifferent and maybe a little bit nitty, but I decided to just let this one go and try to find a better spot. Let me know what y'all would do. Alright, gonna try to make some back in this hand. There is a limp. The player to my right raises it up to 30. We're on the button with ace king. I make it 100. Fold to the player to my right, and she is the only caller. So gonna try to make some chips back in this hand, and hopefully so when a flop comes down ace high. She checks it over to me, and on a board like this, just gonna bet super small. I bet 50, although in hindsight, I think I can actually bet smaller because she only has around $250 behind. After hemming and hawing for a while, she eventually folds. So at least we made a little bit back. Well, if you look at this, we have ace king once again. Just a warning, we get ace king so many times in the session. There is 2 limps to me, I make it 35 in later position. The first limper calls, and now the lady to my right goes all in for around $80. Well, we're obviously not folding. I check the players who is behind me, I check his stack, and he does have around $350 behind. So sure, I guess I could call this raise, but I think the best play is just to re-raise myself, isolating the all-in player. So that's what I do. I put in 400 bucks, he folds, and we're off to see a run out. The flop comes 6 deuce 4, turn is a queen, river is a 10, so really don't think we're going to be winning this one. And that is the case as she flips over jack 10 of spades. Nice hand. I warn you guys, we have ace king once again. There is a limp, I make it 25, and now the small blind who just sat down re-raises me to $110. He sat down with 1,000, so definitely some more chips to be played with. This time, I just decide to make the call, and we're off to see a flop, which doesn't bring that much help. Queen 10 for all hearts. He now c-bets for around 2/3 the size of the pot. I forget the exact amount, but a little bit too much for my liking. I let it go, and wow, we avoided disaster. He has pocket queens. Nice hand. Alright, this hand is a little bit more entertaining. We have 9-7 of hearts and the big blind. A player in early position opens up to 25. There's one call, and I decide to defend my hand. So 3 ways to a flop, where we don't flop much of anything, a reoccurring theme in this session so far. Flop is 8-3 deuce with 1 heart. Early position now continues for only 25. And when action's back on me, I think this is just a sign with the population. Like, I just think most players, if they have an overpair here, they're just going to size up. So when he only bets 25, I think we can probably raise this a lot of the time and get folds from ace king, ace queen. Also, the 8 out there is a heart, which kind of helps with some backdoor draws. So I make it 100. After around 15 seconds, he folds. So not the biggest pot, but hey, we'll take it. In this one, we see a cutoff raise to 15. The button calls. I'm in the small blind with 10-7 of clubs. I think a fold, let's be honest, I hate folding these kind of hands, but I think a fold or a re-raise is okay. This time I decide to just call, which is probably the worst out of the 3. The big blind fold, so we end up going 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes down pretty good. We go ahead and flop a flush draw. King 6-5. It checks to the initial aggressor, and he continues for 40. The button folds, and for that price, pretty happy to make the call. The turn now brings no help. It's the queen of spades. I check it over to him, and facing a large bet, probably just going to let this one go. But luckily, he checks it back. So we get to see a free river, which is no help. It is another 5. So sitting here with 10 high, we're obviously not going to be winning at showdown. I'm honestly not too interested in betting really big, trying to get a king or a queen maybe to fold. But what sounds more enticing, if you will, is actually a small bet, just trying to get those ace highs to fold, maybe some smaller pairs. So that's what I end up doing. I decide to bet super small. I bet $40. Good thing about this bluff is because it's so small, it doesn't have to work that often. And once I place this wager, he immediately starts asking if I had a missed flush draw. Obviously trying to give him no information. I look straight at the board. I see him pick up chips, so I'm already accepting defeat. But he puts them back down and he mucks. So let's go. We get this tiny bluff through here on the river. This hand is pretty interesting. There's a limp. We are in the cutoff with 9-6 of hearts. I make it 25. The button, who has been a extremely tight player this whole night, he calls to 25 and the other player tags along as well. So 3 ways to a flop doesn't really bring much help. It comes 2-7-7 with 1 heart. So not the worst flop in the world. For our exact hand, we do have a backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, but if we did have those overpairs, they are likely still ahead on this board. So when it checks to me, I decide to bet small. I bet $25. And the player on the button, who I mentioned has been pretty snug this whole night, now raises me, but pretty small, to $60. The other player folds. And versus this sizing, I'm just sitting here thinking that if I had a strong hand like an overpair, what would I do? And I definitely wouldn't be folding. He has around $1,500 in a stack. He actually has me covered. So there's definitely some maneuvering to be done on future streets. I make the call. The turn is pretty good. It comes in 8. So now we are open-ended. I check it over to him, and he bets once again pretty small. He bets $65. So pretty much the same size that he chose on the flop. If he bet larger, I probably would just call and then try to get fancy on the river. But against this size, I think we just have to raise here almost all the time. I think his hand is pretty face up. I think he likely has a pair, probably 9s, 10s, jacks, maybe even like 6s. So I decide to pounce on this small bet. I raise it up to $225, planning on betting massive on the river, whether we get there or we don't. Well, he doesn't snap fold, so my suspicion that he has a pair is probably correct. And after around 45 seconds, he does eventually fold. So our play works out perfectly once again. Let's go. This hand is the hand of the night, in my opinion. We're in the big blind with 10 deuce of clubs. The button limps, the small blind limps, and I go ahead and check my action. The flop isn't the worst. It comes jack 9 deuce, 2 hearts, 1 club, bottom pair with some backdoor draws. The small blind leads out for pots. He bets $15. We each are pretty deep, over $1,000, so I make the call and the button folds. The turn is the single juiciest card in the deck. It comes the queen of clubs. So to go along with our bottom pair, we are now open-ended with a flush draw. The small blind doesn't slow down. He continues to bet pot. He bets $50, and obviously we are never folding. But I don't think we can raise just because he bet so big. So in position, don't want to get blown off of our equity. I decide to just make the call. And hey, maybe we still are ahead of some of his front door flush draws that are just barreling. The river now is the 7 of hearts. So we miss everything, and the front door flush draw does come in. The small blind continues to bet, but this time he doesn't bet pot, he bets half pot. He bet $75, so on the flop, he bet 15, turn he bet 50, river 75. So pot, pot, half pot. And I don't know about you guys, but I think if he had a flush, he would be betting a lot bigger. So I think he's kind of trying to set his own price with maybe 2 pair, top pair, maybe even a straight. Pretty sure he doesn't have a flush here, so I'm going to try to pounce on this smaller size. I decide to bump it up to 300. Well, thank the Lord, we do not get snap called, and he immediately looks frustrated. And he goes ahead and just folds face up. In about 3 seconds, he shows 10-8 offsuit. So we turned a straight, and wow, we end up getting a pretty strong hand to fold. Out of courtesy, he showed his card, so I'll be kind and show him my 2 of clubs. Let's go. In this hand, we see an early position raise to 20. The button calls. I am in the big blind with jack 7 of clubs. I decide to make the call. Probably a little bit wide, but hey, here we are. The flop isn't the worst. It comes 10-9-3. So we go ahead and flop a gutter overcard with a backdoor flush draw. I start off with a check, initial aggressor checks, and now the button bets 20. So versus this small size, I think a raise is not the worst idea. but I just call, and the initial aggressor calls as well. The turn is another 9, so we do not improve. I check it, and action now ends up checking all the way around. So we get to see a free card, which is a king. So we miss everything, and I'm sitting here with just jack high. Sure, against 2 opponents, I think checking and just giving up is probably wise, but I think I, out of everyone, am most likely to have a 9 as played. So I decide to try and take this one down. I bet $110. Also, we have a jack, which blocks queen jack, although maybe not that relevant. The initial aggressor now looks at his chips, and he picks up 4 black chips and raises me to 400. The other player immediately goes all in for less, and obviously it looks like we just ran into it in this hand. I fold, and the initial aggressor ended up having pocket 10s. So well played. In this one we end up losing a decent chunk. In this next one we are in the cutoff with 10-5 of spades, which is probably just a mistake even opening. It's definitely a mistake. I make it 20. We only see the big blind make the call. So we're going heads up to a flop, which comes jack 10 queen with 2 clubs and 1 heart. He checks it over to me, and on a board like this, I'm just going to be range betting. So I bet tiny, I bet $10, and he makes the call. Well, the turn puts a 4-liner on the board. It is the 9 of hearts. He checks it over to me, and sure, we do have a pair, which I guess we could take to showdown. But I think on this card, if he has a queen or a jack, it's going to be hard for him to stick around. So I continue for $30, and he does make the call. So obviously, not the ideal outcome that we were hoping for. The river is the ace of spades. So when he checks it to me once again, I think that we should probably be putting in another barrel. If he had any 2-pair holdings on the turn, I think facing one last bet, he'll probably fold. If he has a sticky queen or jack, maybe he'll fold now that there's an ace out there. I don't know. This is just why you shouldn't be playing these hands in the first place. So I don't know. I think we should probably be betting, but I don't want to bet too big, because if he has a king, he's going to call regardless, or raise rather. And if he has 2 pairs, I think a medium-sized bet will be just as effective. So I bet $65, and we immediately get raised. I end up letting this one go, and this was pretty much just a straight-up punt. One of the larger pots we play here tonight. This one, there's a limp. We see the player to my right raise to 30. I'm in late position with ace-jack offsuit. I decide to re-raise it up to 100. Folds back around to the player to my right, and he ends up making the call. So we're going heads up to a flop. The flop doesn't bring much help. We go ahead and flop 2 overs. Comes out 8-9 deuce with 2 clubs. We do have the ace of clubs, which is nice. He checks it over to me on a board like this. I'm going to be betting around 2/3 the size of the pot, and he does make the call. We're off to see a turn, which isn't the best. It comes to the 9 of hearts, pairing the top card. He checks it over to me, and I think if I had any overpairs, I probably would just be checking on this card a lot of the time. So that's what I end up doing. The river's the 10 of hearts, so we're sitting here with just ace high. My opponent now bets pretty big. He bets around $300. And sure, I guess you could sit here and try to justify here calling with ace high. But considering we bet 2/3 on the flop, I don't think he's ever floating with any hands that we are ahead of. So I don't know, I think we have a pretty easy decision here. It sucks, but I end up letting it go. Last hand of the night, and this one is just silly. We have jack 3 of diamonds on the button straddle. We see a player who recently sat raise it up to 25, which is never a good sign. When you see the 2.5 raise size, generally means that they know what they're doing. Just a quick FYI. But regardless, we defend it with a suited jack, and the flop ends up coming no help. Recurring theme in this session, 10-8-4, not even a diamond out there. He c-bets for 30, and against this size, I think fold is just completely fine. But I have some devious intentions, and we've been losing pretty much every pot for the past hour and a half. So I float one, planning on stealing it on future streets. The turn is the deuce of clubs, so no help to our exact hand. My opponent continues the barrel once again. He bets $65, and now I should just be 100% folding. But as you guys can probably guess, I am probably just pushing it a little bit too hard later on in this session. I'm going to float once again, just trying to justify that he could still be barreling with these flush draws, queen jacks, ace king, ace queen. You guys get the drill. And if he checks river, maybe I can take it down there. So I call the 65, and the river is a 3, the 3 of hearts. So we do river some showdown value, but this whole plan just goes down the drain when my opponent goes all in for around $350. Sure, I guess we could justify that he missed his flush draw, but I don't know, this is just a stupid hand that I should never have been involved with. So I pretty quickly fold, although we do river a pair. And after this one, I'm just kind of realizing that I'm not playing the best, so I wisely cash out and go hit the cage. Alright guys, just finished the session. I'm at Wawa at the gas station. And for those who do not have Wawa in your state, I feel bad for you. They didn't have them in or I guess they currently still don't have them in North Carolina. I pretty much go to Wawa after every single session. That's another story. I'm getting on a tangent. Let's focus back to the poker results. We were in the game for 1,500, ended up cashing out for $1,004. So ended up losing basically 500, which isn't the best outcome. But to be honest with you guys, I really didn't have too many like super strong hands tonight. Just off the top of my head, like whenever I had ace king, the few times that I flopped an ace, like the pots were extremely small. I also will be the first one to say that I probably was over bluffing a little bit too much in the session. Probably shouldn't have tried to navigate as loosely post flop. Ended up costing me a few $100, and you know, it is what it is. But before I do hang up this vlog, I do want to shout out Hard Rock once again. It means a lot, and I can't wait to make some more vlogs down here at the wonderful Guitar in Hollywood, Florida. So, I'm gonna hang up this vlog. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, if you enjoyed, hit the thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.